All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today I want to get into something much deeper than, say, the usual productivity hacks or
Mm.
morning routines.
hmm
We're really aiming for a kind of high-level strategy session here,
hmm
something that gets to the core
Well, of presence.
of perceived authority.
It's a critical focus because I think most people, they view confidence as a personality trait.
Right, something you're born with or you're not.
Exactly. Or maybe you get it through life experience somehow. But the material we're looking at, it really reframes this. We're moving away from confidence as just a feeling
Hmm.
and redefining it as a structure, something you actively build.
A structure, I like that. It's
Yeah.
measurable, it's intentional, you build it brick by brick.
Precisely.
And I want to start with a pattern that I think is almost universal. I call it the gravitational pull of the comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, why is it that when we're faced with a really crucial moment, a chance to speak up in a tough meeting or to lead when no one else will, or even just to connect with someone important, why do we so often default to hesitation, to silence?
Or just outright avoidance.
Yes, exactly. We know what we should do, but we choose the easy path.
Yeah.
What is the psychology behind that? Why are we actively sabotaging our own impact?
That hesitation you're describing, that's probably the clearest sign of what we could call the shadow self.
Okay.
It's that part of us that's just, perpetually drawn towards what's easy, what's safe, what's non-confrontational.
It's a survival mechanism, right?
It's absolutely an evolutionary mechanism. It's designed to keep us safe from threats.
Mm.
But in our modern world, in a professional context, it just guarantees stagnation.
Yeah.
When you choose avoidance, you're prioritizing that fleeting moment of comfort over the long-term growth that the difficult task would have given you.
And that leads us right into the core challenge for today's deep dive.
Uh,
I mean, people are making these definitive judgments about us, about our personality, our competence, our confidence in seconds. And they're not looking at our resume. They're judging us entirely on how we present
The
ourselves.
signals we send.
The way we speak, how we carry ourselves, how we react when we're under pressure. And if we're just passive about those signals, we're basically letting other people define our value.
You're outsourcing it.
Yeah, and that creates these hard, invisible ceilings on how far we can actually go.
And that outsourcing happens because of that fundamental misconception you mentioned, this idea that you have to feel confident before you can act. People are waiting. They're waiting for this magical feeling of being ready.
I'm waiting for the confidence to show up.
Yes, and it never does. The deep insight we really have to internalize here is that it's the complete inverse. We have to act our way into feeling confident.
The action comes first.
Always. Confidence is the result of the action you took. It's not a prerequisite for it. So our mission today really is to outline the specific, repeatable actions that can fundamentally shift how the world, and maybe more importantly, how you perceive your own authority.
Okay, let's unpack this architecture of avoidance. It starts with an internal conflict, doesn't it? Kind of self-limitation.
It does.
Our sources really emphasize the corrosive effect of skipping uncomfortable tasks. Putting off that difficult email or avoiding a necessary conversation.
Or even just skipping a workout you promised yourself you'd do.
Yes, all of it. We build this consistent pattern of choosing hesitation over tension. What is the cumulative psychological message that sends to our own identity?
The message is, it's devastatingly simple, really. It's, I am unreliable.
Wow.
Every time you put something off because it feels hard or inconvenient, you are reinforcing a negative feedback loop. You're teaching your subconscious that your immediate emotional state is in charge.
Like a strategic mind.
Exactly. Not your values, not your goals, just how you feel in that split second. The task itself could be tiny, a 5-minute phone call, but the cumulative weight of 100 of those small avoidances, it creates this massive deficit in self-respect and self-discipline.
And we feel that deficit as a lack of confidence.
That's what it is. It's not some genetic weakness. It's a deficit built from repeatedly breaking tiny promises to ourselves.
So it's earned. Our lack of confidence is something we've actually, in a way, worked for.
Precisely. Confidence isn't built in comfort, where nothing is tested. It is forged in tension. And the key transformational move, the real strategy, is to recognize that specific moment of hesitation.
That little pause.
That split second where you feel the impulse to put it off. And you have to learn to transform that impulse into a non-negotiable action. That moment of tension is the inflection point. That's where the growth happens.
This is fascinating to me because it strips away all the emotional drama around it. It means the value doesn't come from the size of the task. It's not about, responding to a difficult client versus launching a huge new product.
No.
It's about the consistency of breaking that avoidance pattern.
That is the strategic brilliance of this approach. We're always looking for these massive, heroic acts of courage to prove ourselves. But the real work is much quieter. It's the daily refusal to give in to that gravitational pull of ease. By acting consistently, even in small ways when you feel discomfort, you're rewiring your entire relationship with fear.
You're proving to yourself over and over that you're the kind of person who faces challenges.
Yes. And that habit builds an internal resilience that you cannot fake. It's not something you can just decide to have one day. And when you have that solid track record with yourself, the external world senses it. They feel that unshakable foundation.
So this internal weakness, this deficit we've built, it eventually shows up externally. And this is where the idea of holding your ground when someone doubts you comes into play.
It's all connected.
If our internal track record is just riddled with these little self-imposed failures,
Right.
all those tasks we avoided, we become incredibly vulnerable.
Profoundly vulnerable. Think of that internal avoidance like an open wound. External doubt, from a skeptical colleague or a client, it's only really devastating when it meets your own internal doubt.
I see.
If you haven't done that quiet, difficult work, then when someone questions your ability, a little part of you just silently agrees with them.
Because you don't have the evidence to fight back with.
You have no proof, so you crumble, not because their criticism is necessarily true, but because you lack the self-respect that's built from your own history of effort. You can't hold your ground externally if you haven't built that proof internally.
So the strategy isn't about coming up with a clever, fiery comeback.
No, not at all. It's about relying on a quiet, verifiable self-knowledge.
I've handled things like this before. I can handle this now.
That's the strategic difference. You stand firm, not on wishful thinking or bravado, but on a track record, on a history of small victories. If you choose to crumble under that external doubt, you validate the critic. You give them power over you. But if you rise above it, if you respond with, say, calm decisiveness and just sustained, undeniable quality in your work.
You erase the doubt with results.
You erase it with results, not with words. The strongest possible position you can take in a moment of challenge is just quiet restraint coupled with focused action.
Okay, so this can feel a little abstract. How do we start building that internal proof? I mean, is it a checklist? Is it some kind of mental trick?
It's a daily confrontation. It's about facing the mundane discomforts. Let's say, you have to draft a really difficult email. Maybe it's about a budget failure.
Yeah, the one you keep pushing to the bottom of the list.
That one. Your mind is going to give you 100 perfectly logical reasons to put it off until tomorrow. That is the moment of truth. Instead of letting your feelings dictate the outcome, you define the action. You say, I will spend exactly 15 minutes drafting the hardest parts of this email right now, regardless of how I feel.
So you're not even aiming to finish it.
No, you're aiming for momentum. The goal is to break the pattern of avoidance. By doing that over and over, your subconscious gets a new directive. It learns the identity I am building is one that moves towards tension, not away from it. And over time, that internal voice of doubt it gets quieter. Because you have real hard evidence to counter its claims.
That self-proof, then, it builds the internal resilience.
Yeah.
So now let's transition to the tactical framework, the external signals.
Yeah.
If confidence is a structure, we need these foundational, repeatable behaviors that shift both how we feel inside and how we're perceived on the outside.
The anchors of presence.
Exactly. And we're starting with nonverbal presence, what we could call the silent commands we're issuing all the time. Let's start with the commitment of eye contact. A lot of people avoid this. It feels aggressive to them, or maybe too intimate, or just plain awkward. Analytically, why is eye contact so critical to how we're perceived?
Yeah.
To our authority and to trust?
Eye contact is the commitment to connection. It is the clearest nonverbal signal that says, I am here, I am present, and I am not planning to run away.
Okay.
And that signal it's multi-layered, it's primal. First, it shows you value the other person. You're deeming them worthy of your full, undivided attention. And in a world that's so distracted, that kind of focus is magnetic.
It's rare.
It's very rare. Second, it shows profound self-respect. You're comfortable enough in your own skin to be fully seen. But maybe the most important part psychologically is that maintaining eye contact forces you to interrupt your own anxious internal monologue.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can't be lost in your head rehearsing what you're going to say next while you're maintaining a steady, calm gaze with another person. It pulls you out of your anxiety and into the present.
So that focus on the present moment, That's like the hidden superpower of eye contact. When you're looking at someone, you're forced to be anchored in the now. You can't be drifting off into worries about the future or regrets about the past.
Exactly. And when you are anchored, you are perceived as stable. Now, the common mistake people make is turning it into an aggressive, unbroken stare,
Right, the staring contest.
which just activates the other person's flight response. We're not aiming for that. We're aiming for a calm, steady presence. A practical technique for anyone who struggles with this is what you could call the 70-30 rule.
Okay, with that.
You hold steady eye contact for roughly 70% of the time, especially when you're listening or when you're making a really crucial point, and then you allow for natural breaks. You glance away for a moment to gather a thought, then you re-engage. It feels much more natural.
And are there any, practical aids, things to focus on to keep your gaze from nervously darting around?
The best aid is a quiet focus technique. You simply notice the color of the person's eyes or the specific shape of their eyebrows. It gives your mind a simple, neutral task.
So it's not a competition, it's an observation.
It's an observation. It keeps your concentration natural and grounded. You're training yourself to stay present during human interaction. And when you embrace this, people respond in a fundamentally different way. They lean in, they share more. They treat you with more respect because you are signaling equality and focus. That stability you're projecting translates directly into perceived authority.
That powerful, immediate impression leads us right to the next nonverbal anchor, the authority of stillness. I want to know, how does what we don't do with our body actually enhance our message? Why is that impulse to fidget, to pace, to shift our weight? Why is that such a massive energy leak?
Unnecessary movement it's like a distraction tax on your credibility.
A distraction tax. I like that.
Think about it this way. Every little movement you make costs the listener mental energy. Fidgeting, pacing, wringing your hands, constantly adjusting your clothes. All of those things signal internal anxiety. They signal a lack of self-control.
So the listener's brain is tracking the movement instead of the words.
Their attention is split. Your body is screaming, "I'm nervous and I want to escape," even if your words are saying, "I'm in complete command."
So when you stand still, you communicate stability. You communicate self-control, certainty. Your body becomes this silent, reassuring anchor for the listener.
That is the goal. When your body is stable, people instinctively associate you with competence, with trustworthiness. It doesn't mean you become a statue. Any movement you make should be intentional, not random.
So a leader might take a step forward to emphasize a point.
Exactly. And that purposeful movement has so much more impact because it stands in stark contrast to their habitual stillness. It amplifies the message.
What does that stillness look like in practice? Let's say you're in a high-stakes presentation or even just on a video call. How do you adopt that grounded stand?
The grounded stand always starts with your feet. They should be about shoulder width apart, knees slightly unlocked, with your weight distributed evenly. You want to relax your shoulders, let your arms hang naturally at your sides. The goal is to feel rooted, not rigid.
And on a video call?
In a virtual setting, stillness is even more critical. Every unnecessary movement, bouncing in your chair, rapid head turns, it's all magnified by the camera. It can make you seem chaotic or unprofessional. Your body should be relaxed, but also responsive and still.
There's a powerful psychological loop here too, isn't there? When our body is stable, it sends a message of safety back to our own nervous system.
Absolutely. The body and mind are locked in this constant feedback loop. When you physically ground yourself, your body sends a signal of stability up to your brain. This helps to settle that internal monologue, that anxious chatter.
Which leads to a feeling of inner control.
It does. You're channeling your nervous energy into your content and your delivery instead of letting it leak out through scattered, restless movement. Stillness is strategic energy management.
Okay, so we've moved from the visible to the audible anchors.
Yeah.
Let's talk about tone. The sources say that your tone decides whether people actually value your words. How does controlling the texture of your voice translate into professional respect and authority?
Tone is it's the emotional architecture of your communication.
Like emotional architect.
It's how you frame the seriousness, the intent, and the importance of your message. A controlled tone shows that you are intentional. It shows that you respect yourself enough to deliver your message clearly without a lot of emotional baggage attached. And that self-control is precisely what earns respect from others.
I think we've all seen this. Two people can deliver the exact same information,
Yes.
but the one with the steady, calm tone is always taken more seriously than the one who sounds high-pitched or rushed or defensive.
That contrast is especially stark in high-stakes situations. Disagreements, negotiations, conflicts. Places where emotions are running hot and voices tend to rise.
So how do you strategically use your tone in those moments to maintain composure and command attention?
The most powerful strategic weapon in a high-stakes environment is the tactical pause,
The pause.
often paired with a slight lowering of your vocal register. When a conflict starts to escalate, the person who instinctively lowers their pitch and slows their delivery, often, almost inadvertently, assumes control of the situation.
Why is that?
It's physiological. A lower register is perceived by the listener's brain as less aggressive and more deliberate. So in a moment of heat, the key is to take those 2 or 3 critical seconds before you respond.
That pause is a moment of choice. It lets you bypass that immediate emotional reflex and activate your strategic mind.
Exactly. That pause is your window of opportunity. It's where you choose a clear, unwavering tone. Maybe it's firm, if you're setting a boundary, or it's inviting, if you're trying to persuade. But it's never hostile or aggressive. When everyone else is escalating, the person who stays steady commands immediate attention. You want your message to be heard, not dismissed as just another emotional outburst.
So mastering tone isn't about being monotone or robotic.
Not at all. It's about adaptability. It's about matching the texture of your voice to the strategic intent of your message.
That control extends directly to our pace, doesn't it? I mean, rushing when you speak suggests uncertainty. It's like you want to get the conversation over with as quickly as possible, which signals a lack of confidence.
A deep lack of confidence, both in your message and in yourself.
So what's the strategy for using pace as a tool of power, instead of just letting it be a symptom of anxiety?
Speaking slower communicates profound control. It signals that your message is important, that it's worth the listener's full, unhurried attention. A rapid, rushed pace just overwhelms people, they miss the nuances, and they create this unconscious association between you and nervousness.
Whereas a measured, deliberate pace does the opposite.
It does several key things. First, it gives weight to your pauses. And as we just discussed, silence is one of the most powerful tools for impact. It lets your critical points really sink in. And second, it gives you the time you need for careful word choice. This reduces misunderstandings and makes you sound more thoughtful and more prepared.
So it's not just about slowing down, it's about using that new time buffer to improve clarity and credibility.
Precisely. People don't associate measured, steady talking with being slow. They associate it with authority, with intellectual rigor. Think of any effective leader you admire. They rarely rush their key points. They use timing strategically. By taking your time, you transform the interaction from a monologue you're desperate to finish into a deliberate experience where the listener feels respected and included.
This rhythmic, intentional communication, it anchors both of you in the present moment.
It does, and it increases the meaning and the memorability of every single word you say.
This feels like a really comprehensive framework. It builds outwards. You start with the internal control,
The self-proof, yes, phase one.
and then you build the first layer of the structure, which is this external control. The nonverbal signals, stillness, eye contact, and the audible signals of pace and tone.
That's phase two, and once those anchors are in place, you're ready for the next step.
Phase 3, proactive engagement.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've established the internal foundation. We've built the physical and audible anchors. Now we move into how we apply this newfound presence to our external interactions, the actions that proactively shape our reputation and drive momentum. Let's start with what our sources call the influence of initiation, specifically greeting first. This seems so deceptively simple. Why does this small act of just saying hello first hold so much weight?
Greeting first is it's a subtle but very powerful act of social leadership.
Social leadership.
Yes. You're choosing to set the frame for the interaction. You are taking the first step to connect. You're setting a tone of warmth, of recognition, of positive engagement. Instead of waiting around to be noticed or validated by someone else.
You're signaling that you're secure enough to initiate.
Secure, open, and approachable. People instinctively respond to that quiet assertiveness because it cuts through the social hesitation that affects most people in most interactions.
So how does that play out in a typical professional environment, say walking into the office in the morning or into a networking event?
In any of those environments, initiating greetings dramatically reduces the psychological barriers between people. It helps you build a reputation as someone who is welcoming, who brings positive energy. This makes people feel psychologically safer around you, which increases cooperation and collaboration down the line.
And what about the internal impact?
The internal impact is the most profound part. It's self-validation. By initiating, you are repeatedly telling yourself that you are capable of starting interactions. You're confronting social anxiety in these small, manageable doses, giving yourself continuous proof that starting a conversation is not the huge, risky, high-stakes event your mind tries to make it out to be.
That constant self-proof just strengthens your self-image.
It rapidly strengthens it.
Okay, so you've initiated the interaction. Now, how do you deepen that connection and increase your influence? The sources really emphasize the strategic value of thoughtful questions. Why does asking them about themselves actually increase our perceived influence?
Because thoughtful questions are the highest expression of active listening and genuine curiosity. Most people in a conversation are just waiting for their turn to speak.
Right, they're just formulating their next sentence.
Exactly. But when you ask a truly thoughtful question, you demonstrate that you are genuinely invested in understanding their perspective, and that makes the other person feel profoundly heard and valued.
And that feeling builds trust.
It builds trust and rapport far more rapidly and reliably than any clever statement or impressive story you could tell about yourself. When you create a space where someone feels respected, they associate you with that positive, affirming experience.
So we need to be clear about what makes a question thoughtful versus just generic filler.
Generic questions, how was your weekend or how's it going? They solicit one-word answers. They maintain emotional distance.
Right.
Thoughtful questions dig deeper. They're based on context, on the emotional subtext of what the person is actually saying. For example, if a colleague mentions they're working on a massive new project, instead of just asking, is it complicated? You could ask
Something like, what part of that project are you finding the most intellectually challenging and why?
perfect. Or if they mention they're feeling stressed, you avoid the cliche, you should take a break. And instead, you ask, what's the one specific task that's been taking up most of your mental bandwidth lately?
Those kinds of questions. They turn a brief, superficial update into a meaningful exchange. That's a very subtle but powerful form of conversational leadership.
It absolutely is. You are gently guiding the interaction toward depth and insight without ever dominating the conversation. It shows intelligence and relational maturity. And the mutual benefit is profound. When you model this kind of genuine interest, others are often encouraged to reciprocate. Both of you walk away feeling more invested and more respected.
Okay, now we move to what feels like the ultimate test of this internal strength, the courage to stand alone. This is defined by the idea of speaking your opinion, especially when it goes against the group consensus. What are the psychological stakes if we habitually fail to do this?
The stakes are the loss of your character, your authenticity.
That's high stakes.
It is. The fear of being judged, the fear of social tension, the simple desire to be liked by everyone. It leads us to agree with things we fundamentally don't believe in. We hide our real selves. And that pattern is corrosive because when you habitually choose conformity over your own conviction, you lose the internal clarity you need for strategic decision-making.
You don't know what you actually think anymore.
Exactly. If you let fear decide when you speak and when you stay silent, you will spend your life following paths that were dictated by others. And that costs you genuine strength of character. You're trading short-term comfort for the long-term destruction of your authentic self.
So the moment of dissent, even if it's uncomfortable, is an act of crucial self-proof.
Mm-hmm.
How does speaking your mind in that moment build self-trust and that foundational confidence we're talking about?
Speaking your opinion, especially when there's tension. Let's say you're the one person who challenges a fatally flawed strategy in a meeting. That act proves to yourself definitively that your voice matters. You stop waiting for external validation or approval for your thoughts to exist.
And that self-trust becomes this quiet internal source of strength.
It becomes the bedrock. It fundamentally changes your posture, your tone, your entire way of being. It grounds you. And furthermore, accepting the fact that people won't always agree with you. That is true emotional freedom.
Right.
It dismantles your dependence on universal approval, which is the core difference between true, quiet confidence, which is rooted internally, and arrogance, which is desperately dependent on external validation.
That acceptance lets you act from a place of conviction, not from a place of fear.
Precisely. You move from the fear of being disliked to the confidence of being known. And being known, even if it leads to some disagreement, is far more strategically valuable than being universally liked but ultimately ignored.
Finally, let's talk about the highest application of this entire framework. The momentum of leadership. In those moments of group hesitation, where everyone is just looking around waiting for someone else to act, Why is it mandatory that one person steps forward even if they don't have all the information?
Because hesitation is a contagion.
It spreads.
It spreads uncertainty. And uncertainty, if left unchecked, inevitably creates paralysis. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's built in those gaps of uncertainty. Taking that first step, any first step, cuts through the collective inertia and immediately creates momentum. The biggest enemy in those situations is not failure. It's not making the wrong choice. It's the paralysis of inaction.
If you wait for the perfect conditions, the opportunity is gone.
If the opportunity, the market, the critical window of time, it will pass you by.
So what does effective leadership in that moment of uncertainty look like? It can't just be reckless bravado. It has to be grounded in the composure we've been talking about.
It requires calm decisiveness paired with humble communication. The leader has to stay calm, drawing on that stillness and controlled pace we discussed. They have to assess the immediate, logical next step, even if it's incomplete, and then communicate it clearly. The message isn't, follow me, I have the perfect answer.
The message is, we need to move. Here's a starting point.
Exactly. For example, if a team is deadlocked, arguing over 3 different paths, the leader steps in and says, we've analyzed all 3 paths. Time is our enemy now. I propose we spend the next 48 hours testing the key assumptions of option A. If it fails, we pivot to B. That's our next move.
It provides a starting point rather than demanding the perfect solution.
Absolutely. And that willingness to act without perfect clarity is what builds a reputation for providing direction when everyone else is stuck. People remember who took the lead when things were difficult. And this habit is critical because it strengthens your own decision-making muscle, allowing you to trust your judgment in even more complex situations in the future.
It's the final application of the principle. Action precedes the feeling. You take the lead, and the feeling of authority follows.
It's a whole framework in a single action.
This entire structure seems to be built on a series of these small, intentional refusals. Refusing to put off the difficult email, refusing to drop eye contact, refusing to rush your words,
Refusing to hide your opinion.
and refusing to wait for someone else to initiate.
The power is in those small daily decisions to be proactive instead of reactive.
This has been a profound re-engineering of the whole concept of confidence. To summarize the crucial strategic shift, it feels like we've moved from defining confidence as some vague feeling to understanding it as a structure.
A structure built entirely on strategic action.
Right. And we define that structure across 3 phases. First, we have to overcome that architecture of avoidance by choosing tension over comfort. Then we build the anchors of presence through the commitment of eye contact, the authority of stillness, and mastering our tone and pace.
The internal and external anchors, yes.
And finally, we apply those anchors through proactive engagement and initiating connections, asking thoughtful questions, having the courage to speak our truth, and taking the lead when momentum stalls.
And if there is one single final insight to really integrate from all of this, it has to be the power of consistency over intensity.
Right. It's not about one big day.
No. These are not performance tips for a big presentation. They are identity-shaping habits. Every time you face an uncomfortable task you would normally avoid, every time you hold steady eye contact through your nervousness, or every time you speak your opinion instead of just nodding along, you are reinforcing the single crucial piece of self-knowledge you need.
Which is?
I can handle this. This constant, intentional self-proof creates a quiet, unshakable self-assurance that requires no external announcement. It needs no validation from anyone else.
So that decision to act instead of react, to choose the slightly harder, more uncomfortable option in those small daily moments of hesitation, that is the singular factor that determines our trajectory of growth.
The challenge ultimately is never in the world outside of you. The real challenge is in your own mind. It's asking yourself if you are willing to face the small discomforts today to ensure that the world responds to a stronger, more capable, and more confident version of you tomorrow.
That is the true daily work of strategic presence.
That's all it is.
That's the deep dive for today. Thank you for joining us.